Greetings. It is week 8, uh, and we're talking about ethics, responsibility, and uh, preaching. And we've had some fantastic reading this week. And the questions are: what are some examples of power abuse you have witnessed or experienced through preaching? Um, I first, in just listening to uh, or reading many of the readings and just reflecting on this week, um, I think the primary thing that comes to mind is the abuse of uh, the way that parishioners see finances. I think there has been abuse of power in that regard because people learn to entrust their spiritual leaders with the right to say how they spend money and what they do with money and their investments. And I think that there is a spirit of um, this sort of a seducing spirit attached to the sometimes the way that we interact with finances in our teaching. I've seen people be abused. I've seen people be told that the Lord will bless them if they give their offering or whatever they have to give to the Lord. I've seen people being falsely told by false prophets that the certain dollar amounts would result, them giving certain dollar amounts would result in a miracle, as though we can like pay God a certain amount of money or He's for sale, His miracles are for sale. I've also seen a lot of spiritual manipulation through relationships, like the power kind of distributed in order to uh, make people like stay at certain churches or believe certain things or believe that because of their relationship with the leader that they can go other places. I've had mentees in my work as a higher education administrator learn about certain religious or spiritual cults and get deeply invested and find out that sort of it's a trick of power to manage their mind, their heart, their spirit, their finances. Um, so definitely money and power and how those are engaged. I think the primary sort of issue, the overarching issue, is manipulation for the means of attaining and sustaining power, and that power abuse for sustaining financial gain is some of the things I've seen. I think that's kind of manifested in, you know, raising offerings specifically for preachers and then doing like 50-50 splits in the back room for just a lot of different things that are not of God from my perspective. And so many of those instances have shaped the essential tenets of my own code of ethics as a preacher. um, I believe what the Bible says about money, but I don't believe it's my responsibility to use the body of believers to gain and sustain a certain lifestyle. I believe that God gives us the ability to gain and maintain wealth, and that He does not call us to do it on the backs of others. In fact, He calls us to gain wealth so that we can exercise true religion, as James 1 and 27 says, when we are giving to the poor and the widows and taking care of the fatherless. Um, the define my understanding of responsibility of a preacher as well as the boundaries that are not to be crossed as a preacher. I define the responsibility of a preacher is to teach the gospel of Jesus Christ unadulterated, without sort of in own insertion of one's own opinion or agenda, but for the sheer person not know Christ to him, I think that the point at which it becomes um, the point in which we get to the point where we've crossed a line is when our agenda is set in our own need and our own need to gain fame, to gain money, to gain attention. I think that's when it becomes unwise and that God is not pleased with what we are doing. And so that's sort of my um, area. I think boundaries that we cross is when we insert our own philosophies and truths and experiences that conflict with the Bible into individuals' lives and lead them in the wrong direction because they trust our influence, whether that be matters concerning their heart, their marriage, their relationships, their jobs, etc. I believe that is the mandate of those of us to preach. I think we also abuse our power when we don't say certain things, when because we want to remain popular or to remain needed or understood or supported or embraced, we don't fulfill God's calling. I believe that that is a form of spiritual abuse. And I think that sometimes we abuse those boundaries when we take our own bias into situations and we condemn and convict people when we use I'm just rambling, I know, but things are just coming to my mind just based on the reading and the things that I've thought about. When we use our own the things that don't convict us to convict other people. Like I've never done this, therefore I'm in the best position to judge and make other people feel bad for what they have done. I believe that crosses a line, and I believe that that makes Christianity feel very inaccessible to other people. And overall, that's our job, to make Christ accessible, to expose individuals to Christ that would not otherwise know them had they not come in contact with Him through our testimony and our witness. So, those are just some thoughts that I have for the week. I look forward to hearing and sharing with the rest of you.